This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Melinda Kiefer, and welcome to Live Green, Tennessee, where we take you across our great state to explore agriculture, agritourism, sustainable living practices, and so much more. In this episode, we sit down with Master Gardener Nancy Christopherson, a volunteer at the Plateau Research and Education Center in Crossville, Tennessee, at the 11th Annual Fall Gardeners Festival. Then we visit Beauchene Berry Farm in Knoxville, Tennessee, to meet with Brian and Alice Beauchene, who have been tending their berry bushes for 35 years so that anyone can pick their own berries. Today, families still come by the minivans full to pick up the ripest fruit in town. And finally, we take you back to the Plateau Research and Education Center in Crossville, Tennessee, to the 11th Annual Fall Gardeners Festival, to sit down with Jason Reeves to discuss his research on herbaceous and woody ornamentals, as well as his elaborate bottle art exhibit, which includes more than 7,000 recycled bottles. All this and more on the next episode of Live Green, Tennessee. At the Plateau Research and Education Center in Crossville, Tennessee, at the 11th Annual Gardeners Festival, we sit down with Master Gardener Nancy Christopherson, who spends a lot of her time volunteering and once served as the co-chair of the Plateau Discovery Garden, a unique partnership between Cumberland County Extension Service and Cumberland County Master Gardeners and the Plateau Research and Education Center.
I am a volunteer. I was a co-chair for many, many years. This is the first year that I've had to step back from that position, but my heart is still here, and so people allow me to keep coming back. So today I assisted with registration, and I've been able to attend my first session. When I helped with the first 10 years, I was never able to attend a session, so I was actually able to hear some of the incredible speakers that we have. I was a co-chair of the Plateau Discovery Garden, so as it grew over the years and then became the UT Gardens, I was a contact person, and that's so even though I was a master gardener, I was kind of like the liaison between ag research, extension, and then the master gardeners here. So I helped coordinate work days, new plantings, classes that we're putting in a new bed, and from that point then we grew and we added classes out here, so I coordinated the classes that we have. I coordinated a big part of the Fall Gardeners Festival in previous years, and then when we started to offer a student internship, then I coordinated that as well. A master gardener is someone who is typically passionate about growing plants, but also passionate about giving information to the community. And so Master Gardeners, it's not just a club, it's not just an organization in that manner. It is about taking that information and helping someone else become independent and actually making good landscaping choices, good planting choices, and just enjoying not only what they do, but sharing that with someone else. It's really important that people look at their landscape, look at the plants that they're growing, and make wise decisions. I think a lot of people get confused and they think, oh, I've got a spray, I'm going to kill it because there's an insect on there. And they don't realize that that is a good chance that that's a beneficial insect. So we want people to actually know what is actually a disease or a condition that needs to be treated, what is something that just occurs naturally with that plant and it's not actually going to hurt that plant, and what are ways that we can bring in other components without utilizing sprays inappropriately and that. So that would be like bringing in your beneficial insects, you're planting things properly so that they're not really tight, so that the airflow gets through, just things like that, just very passionate. And if there is a time that someone feels that they need to spray, whether it's actually an herbicide or a pesticide, or if it's just taking something natural like an insecticidal soap or something, we want people to do that appropriately. We don't want somebody to say, oh, if 1 cup per 8 gallons is good, I'm going to use 8 cups per 8 gallons. it's not a wise decision, and we want to empower people to make the right choices for their yard, for their health, for everything. Soil is hugely important. It's the basis for that plant that's going to grow. It's not only the nutrients that are in that soil, but it's the way that that soil is actually formed. It's going to provide the stability for that plant as well. And if you have a rich soil, if you have an appropriate soil for that plant, the plant's going to do so much better on its own. Where if you take a plant and you put it in, something that has just been thrown there, something that's been destroyed and just put in there, it's not going to do well. That's not going to be healthy for the plant. The gardener is going to become so frustrated and so unhappy, and that plant's going to be given a bad reputation when it's not that plant at all. If you have a good, healthy soil, that plant is going to do very, very well, whether it's ornamental or whether it's a vegetable that you're growing, whether it's a tree for shade or whatever. The soil is primary importance. I can tell you that the amount of rainwater that is lost or that runs off, I don't think people understand the amount that's just being wasted and lost. If you can capture that water, that's a nice, healthy water that's needed for this area, if you can capture that and use that as opposed to using the public water system where people need that for other areas. There are different types of mulches. Pretty much if somebody's putting in a new garden or a new landscape, well, they need to make a choice based on their personal taste. There are some items, some materials that do better than other areas. If you plant a rock in there or just put rocks around there, you're not going to get the nutrients or the benefit if you were to use a hardwood mulch that's actually going to break down. It really comes down to what look that homeowner wants to have, but it's also being knowledgeable about what you're trying to grow and what is going to do the very best for that area. So each of the different types of mulch has a different benefit. There's pros and cons to each one, but it's just so important to learn about each different type before you make that decision and then you're unhappy with that. When you're looking at different pests coming to your plant, it's not uncommon for someone to see something that they refer to as a worm. Oh, there's a worm on here, and they smash it and kill it. And come to find out, that could be a butterfly caterpillar that they're just not aware of. And we're looking at trying to bring back the monarch population, and people, it's not intentional, they just don't know. So you have to be very, very careful on what you are actually killing and what you're taking out. There's other people that, oh my gosh, it's a bee, we have to kill it or we can't plant things because of bees. We are dependent on those bees for actually pollinating our foods. And honey, I keep trying to tell people, if you like honey, we need to keep our bees. So you just need to be really aware of that and their behaviors, and we don't want to be killing things that really and truly are good insects. You need to be so careful of when you prune. Sometimes people want to cut things back because they think it looks like it's dying back in the winter. Oh, we want it to look so pretty. If things are pruned at the wrong time of the year, you're actually cutting off the blossom for the following year. Or you could actually be cutting off an area that is actually going to branch out and be absolutely beautiful. So I think people need to be very aware of the type of plant they have and the type of pruning that requires. Planting for the zone that you live in. There are hardiness zones for each area, and here on the plateau there are 3 different growing zones. And the lower part of the county can be a zone 7. The upper part can be a 6A. So if you're looking at trying to plant plants, and if you go to a store and you see this beautiful plant but you don't look at that, sometimes it could be a tropical plant for a zone 9. You come home and plant it and it's just not going to do well after the first winter typically. So it's just very important to know what zone you reside in and then the plants that will do the best in your area. And that is true for vegetable plants, for ornamental plants. Really, it's crucial to know what your zone is.
You don't always have to travel to the countryside to pick your own fresh berries. Owners Brian and Alice from Beauchesne Blueberry Farm planted their first bushes in West Knox County suburbs back in 1985. Of course, you may want to bring your hat, sunscreen, and a bucket.
Kate, can I put these in your basket? Kate, I have some more. Drop them in there. Yay!
It really is nice to see a small farm that can survive. In the era of big farms, big tractors, massive amounts of yield per acre, this is a small farm that can survive in an area surrounded by subdivisions here in West Knoxville. So many people get to drive down the street and enjoy this right here. This is the Beauchesne Berry Farm here. I'm Brian Beauchesne. My mom, Alice Beauchesne, actually owns and operates it. My parents bought this property in 1985 and started planting blueberry bushes at that time. They were just small little plants. It takes a few years for them to mature and start developing enough to produce blueberries. My mom and dad were about to retire, so they wanted to do something in retirement that would utilize their skills as farmers when they grew up, and that they could share with the other neighborhoods around here.
We started this about 35 years ago. My husband was a UT professor, and he was looking at what would we do when we're retired? What can we plant? Blueberries. Okay, let's do that. To start blueberries, you've got to research what kind of blueberries. Well, these are all rabbit eye. That's the type that grows here.
So now these bushes are over 30 years old and produce blueberries every year in abundance. We have families come out and pick the berries and take them home, enjoy them as fresh berries, put them in smoothies and pancakes, that sort of thing. We're a pick-your-own blueberry farm, and we also have blackberries too. We didn't start with that. In '85, we just envisioned blueberries here. We like growing those because we don't have to spray them with any sprays the way you might do apples and other fruit. These berries have absolutely no sprays on them at all. In fact, we eat them right off the bush all the time. There's certainly rainwater on them, but that's all. You can sample them as you pick. So many kids nowadays just get processed food out of restaurants and grocery stores that aren't really, grown with care and the tenderness that we put into these bushes. We really like to see families see where their food comes from. These blueberries don't just come out of a freezer at the grocery store, they come off a bush. There are some that aren't ripe, you don't pick those. These are ripe, these are the ones you want.
Once they're ready, in the crowd.
Just sharing the experience of farming is as much as what we're about as the farming itself.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Blueberries are very healthy. There's antioxidants, nutrients, vitamins, all sorts of things like that in blueberries that people are just now discovering are so good for you. And they're so fun to pick.
I got it.
You did get it. Very good.
There's no thorns or anything like that. Kids can enjoy picking them. The parents and grandparents that come out with them too have a good time. Well, when you get here, you grab a couple of buckets, go out and pick berries, bring them back, weigh them. Oh, so you picked all these berries?
We did.
Wow, those are great looking berries. So what we do is we put them on a scale and weigh them, and we figure out how many berries you've got. So you don't need to bring anything, except if you might want to bring a belt, wrap it around you and attach your bucket to your belt. That way you got two hands to pick berries with at the same time. Or you can bend the bush down, pick berries like that. The ones that you can't reach, you can put in your bucket. So having a belt is really a good idea. Most people bring sunglasses, maybe some sunscreen, wear a hat, and definitely bring some water. We're picking blueberries in June and July, so it's gonna be hot. If you see berries on the ground around a bush, you know that those are going to be ripe ones. That's going to be a good bush with great berries on it. If you pick berries that aren't totally purple, if you just let them sit out a little bit, kind of like a tomato that's not quite ripe, let it ripen a little bit on your counter and then eat it a day or two later. I really enjoy seeing all the kids come out here, and they'll bring their parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles, meet up with other kids out here, have contests to see who can pick the most berries, see who eats the most berries while they're out here. It's just so nice to see families enjoying blueberries and a great activity, being outside in nature, you know, really seeing them enjoy a farm right here in West Knoxville.
We have so many nice repeat customers, just enjoy seeing them every year. I never imagined I would come back to farming in retirement. You know, I had enough of it as a child. I didn't want to come back to it. Now I do appreciate it though, and I like it. It's different.
Small farms, although maybe hard to manage, are possible, and we'd like to see other people develop, maintain, and produce small farms that grow great food right down the street from your neighbors.
Today, people come from all over the state of Tennessee to UT Gardens to see the elaborate bottle art exhibit of more than 7,000 recycled bottles organized by Jason Reeves, and to take a tour of top performing annuals and perennials that attract some of the most beautiful butterflies.
I'm a research horticulturist at the UT Gardens in Jackson. My position there, it covers a little bit of everything, but I'm in charge of the grounds, the gardens, and the research, the trials that we conduct there. So we conduct trials much as you see here in Crossville on the gardens here, but we do a lot of annual plants as well as trees and shrubs. So growing those plants out, gathering that data, making that data available to the public, but as well as the growers that have provided those plants for us. General groundskeeping, of course, the three gardens together are part of the State Botanic Garden of Tennessee, so we're open to the public year-round, daylight to dark. In the gardens in Jackson, we do a lot of repurposing things in the garden, and some examples of that, our theme a few years ago was reusing bottles. So we had 6,154 wine bottles in the garden, and so we collected those from people brought them in from restaurants, and we used those to build walls. We have a wall that's 44 feet long and 12 feet tall with 1,000 bottles hanging on it in the garden. It's a permanent display. We used them to edge beds. We made bottle trees, and so it was all about reusing, repurposing, and recycling. And so we've done that with bottles. One year our theme was mailboxes, called Come Check the Mail. So we took old mailboxes scattered throughout the garden. Around each mailbox we planted up different plants around them. There was a list in the mailbox of what you could be growing around your mailbox. This year our theme, we kind of went through, it was our 25th anniversary, and so we went through the years and kind of picked up some past themes, and so we did a lot of fun things. We had neckties in the garden, which was a previous theme, so it was called All Tied Up in the Garden. So we had neckties hanging from structures, so men's neckties, and just, yeah, kind of recycling and reusing things in the garden. And so found objects, things you could do at home that don't cost money, and so it was a lot of fun with that. We irrigate at work when necessary. We don't have any automated irrigation, and we go by, you know, what's it doing outside. We look at the soil, and does the plant need water? Is the soil dry? Is the plant wilting? And we water as needed. And so for the homeowner, I think it's really important, if you've got one of those irrigation systems, you can buy a device that collects the rainfall, and you know, it will come on if it needs to, and if it's rained an inch, it's not going to come on. So I feel like we waste a lot of water, especially in commercial and residential landscapes with automatic irrigation. So time of day can be, you know, obviously if you're a working person, you may not be able to irrigate the best time of day, but early in the morning is the best because it's not so hot, you don't lose as much from evaporation. Also, if you have a disease problem, you have less the water staying on the foliage for a shorter amount of time. So watering in the evening It's not quite as good, but when I go home, that's when I water. You've got to do it when it works for yourself. But thinking about those things, time of day is important, and if the plant actually needs it or not. And then just building your soil. Organic matter helps hold moisture in. So building that soil, adding organic matter to it, really helps the plant nutrient-wise, but also hold moisture. So you have to irrigate less. So that's an important aspect of saving water as well. So if you're building your beds, adding whether it's vegetable gardens or flowers, adding organic matter is great. And depending on what part of the country you're in, even from one county to the other, your source of organic matter really may vary. If you're in West Tennessee, we have cotton gin, trash from our cotton gins, which you would not have that here. But there's all sorts of forms of organic matter, whether it's bagged product that you may buy of finely ground pine bark, or chicken manure, or horse manure, or cow manure, just depending on what's in your area. You just want to be sure the product you're using is composted, it's been through a heat before it's killed the seed, kills any diseases that might be in that product. But mixing that in your soil, if you're when I worked in Pennsylvania, mushroom compost was the thing, and it was a wonderful product. And some local wastewater treatment plants make compost from their biosolids, which is a wonderful product. And so they're all different forms. You just got to, your local county extension agent and your Master Gardener program are great sources for that information that you could check out and see what's available in your area. There's all sorts of methods of composting. One of the more simpler forms is just building a structure out of wire or out of maybe even old pallets and three-sided, where you put your plant material in there and you just let it decay. And there's all kinds of information out there on that. Depending on what you have available, how much green material, how much brown material, how much moisture you're giving it, the temperature, all depends how quickly it breaks down, how often you're going to turn the product. But once it does decay, of course, adding that back into the garden is a wonderful way to increase the organic matter in your soil and the nutrition of the soil and the microbes and all the good stuff that we need in our soil to make it work. The university has 3 gardens, one in Knoxville, one in Crossville, where we're here today, and then in Jackson. And those 3 climates are quite different, especially the west end of the state is much hotter, where here on the plateau, of course, is cooler. So different plants for different parts of the country. It is very important when you're choosing a plant to choose the right plant for your location, whether it's the amount of space you have or the soil you have or your climate, doing your homework. Reading in books, reading online, but also talking to fellow gardeners is a wonderful way to learn. So if you're in Knoxville, you're in Crossville, you're in Jackson, getting involved in those local organizations is a great way of learning what plant material. Go into your local garden center as opposed to the box store. Talking to that person that actually grows that plant themselves and finding out what's going to do well in your area is a good way of choosing right plant material. So, there's plants here on the plateau that were growing full sun in my talk today. There's hydrangeas that you can grow here in full sun. In West Tennessee, have to have shade. So knowing your area is very important in choosing the right plant and sustaining that plant and not having to give it additional care because it's struggling in your climate. So very important choosing the right plant. A perennial is a plant that returns each year. People don't think about this, but a tree is actually a perennial. It's here every year, even though it doesn't die to the ground. But most people, when you talk about perennials, are talking about a flowering plant that dies typically to the ground and comes back. A daylily is a wonderful example of that. Everybody knows daylily and iris. So if you're looking to put something in your garden that you don't have to replant every year, a perennial is a wonderful example of that. And depending on, again, what part of the country you're in, depending on what perennial you would use, but daylilies and iris are 2 that are they're going to be there forever. So if you don't want to go to the effort of replanting each year, look for a perennial plant, and it's long term. Now, if you're wanting all summer color from the time you plant it until frost, an annual is a great example of that. And we often don't think about this, but all of our vegetables are annuals. You start with a seed, the tomato in the spring, and by the end of the year you have the fruit and the plant dies. So you're replanting every year. So that's an annual. But zinnias, marigolds, are 2 of the most common. The beautiful sunflowers behind us are annuals, so you do have to replant them every year. But of course the sunflower benefits us in so many different ways, from the seed to the pollinator to the beauty. But again, choosing those annuals or the perennial for your part of the state. For instance, there's geraniums don't do well in the heat of West Tennessee, but they do wonderful here on the plateau. So learning that and finding out which ones is really important. The gardens and the research and education centers across the state are living laboratories, and my role at the university is working with ornamental plants. So we are growing plants to see how well they do in our climate, and again, we're taking data on that plant material. We're seeing what is sustainable. You know, if a plant requires a lot of care, it's not going to get higher marks on our evaluations. And so it is a living laboratory, and those three gardens, the Crossville, Jackson, and Knoxville, are open daylight to dark for people to actually come out and see. And this varies different from your landscape. You may try a little bit, but you don't want to spend a lot of money on a plant and it not do well, so we're doing that for you. So yeah, what we have to offer, our information is very helpful to the homeowner and producer as well.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Live Green Tennessee, where we take you across our state into the farms and businesses of those who are making the moves to eating fresh, living sustainably, and helping us all be more organic in our thinking and the way we live our lives as Tennesseans. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Live Green Tennessee.
This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.